Japan by myself. 34.4 children per thousand women is where we started with the crude birth rate in 1862, and then it continued to fluctuate before reaching 31.9 children per thousand women, plummeting from there, briefly increasing due to the oil shock in Japan, dropping further until 8.17 children per thousand women in 2015. Japan's current extremely low crude birth rate, that means an aging population, which subsequently means a larger burden placed on reducing workers to support pensioners. This is caused by a leap in employment opportunities for women, which means that they don't have enough time to spend all day with their children. This started at 9.88 before slipping down until 6.07 in the 1980s and then gradually increasing till 10.9 to the increasing suicide rates in Japan as employment gets precarious for younger people, which is the opposite of what it should be as a developed country. Expectancy. Japan's life expectancy shortly fluctuated in the start until 1965 before steadily growing until 8.47 on median. That means that older people are living longer and longer, putting a strain on the reducing amount of workers that have to support them. And the rise in life expectancy is again due to medical advancement in technology. Total fertility rate, much like crude birth rate, has plunged over the years, from 3.48 babies per woman until 2.04 over just 10 years, before briefly plateauing and sliding even further down, hitting its record low 1.3, and briefly increasing until 1.51 where we stand today. Again, this is a significant strain on working citizens to support Japan's elderly, caused by the increasing opportunities for women to enter the workforce. Infant mortality rate has steadily slipped down over the years from 57 dead infants per thousand in 1950 till just 2 in 2015. Let's take a look at population pyramids, where we start at stage 3 in the DTM in Japan, where we can see the crude birth rate slightly decreasing down here. Dependency ratio is quite low, which is a stark contrast to what it ends up being here, as higher life expectancy causes a larger dependency ratio since the birth rate decreases over here and here. Again, we can see here decreasing CBR and increasing life expectancy combine to cause a very high dependency ratio, causing a strain on reducing workers. Let's take a look at some distribution graphs. We can see here, for example, an example is Osaka, which is a very densely populated city, but it's on the coastline, and in comparison to mountainous cities, it's very densely populated. Japan is overpopulated in certain areas and underpopulated with young people, and disproportionately overpopulated with older generations. Again, a cause of decreasing birth rate and increasing life expectancy. This population plan addresses the low birth rate, which is due to the long working hours of Japanese men and workers in general. Companies treat regular workers poorly since workers believe they're lucky to have a regular job, and ineffectiveness of labor unions in Japan means that they get away with it. Because of overworking of workers in Japan, the workers have less time to date, marry, and have children, which means that even though they make enough money to support a family, they don't have enough time. The government is currently implementing labor policies with legal caps for overtime hours, but according to interviews with actual workers, companies make workers claim they signed out of work, but force them to stay and continue to work overtime, meaning that the policies are useless. My proposed policy is that the Japanese government creates a cap, much like the one they have now, for regular instead of overtime hours, with here being the numbers that employees would be approximately working. If employees work over the capped amount of time, it officially goes into overtime hours. And if the employee works more than the capped overtime hours, then the Japanese government can legally require that the next month the employee is not required to come to work for as many hours as they worked extra the previous month. Underpopulation of young people, and the lack of childcare accessibility in Japan, since preschool is free but not accessible by the Japanese government. Women don't want more children if those children can't go to preschool or daycare centers so that the women can work. And the government, while they have made all preschooling free for children aged 3 to 5 years old, those spaces are very limited. And my proposed plan addresses that in the sense that the Japanese government can begin a program to quickly train people to become caregivers in daycare centers and preschools. The requirements to enter this program could be minimal, so that more amount of people can fulfill the amount of caregivers to sustain childcare centers. Older workers could work fewer hours and remain longer in the workforce, causing less of a strain on younger people in the workforce to support pensioners. After all, if there are less pensioners, then it's easier to provide for and support them. These are my MLA citations. Thank you for listening.